Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have a 3.5-year-old named Kylie and I have a 21-month-old named Mia. Now, in my last Montessori video, I talked all about how to prepare your home environment for an incoming newborn if you are intending to begin doing Montessori from birth. But if you are a parent of a slightly older child, you might be asking yourself, well, where exactly am I supposed to begin? So from one busy parent to another, today we are going to be exploring a very common question. Is it too late for me to begin doing Montessori at home? I'd first like to point out that Montessori was originally established as an approach to education, but over time it has also evolved into a lifestyle and a method of parenting. So if we're trying to answer the question, is it too late for me to begin doing Montessori with a slightly older child, we need to consider both perspectives. So let's discuss the education aspect of it first. The bottom line is the earlier you can get your child into a formal Montessori education program, the better off they're going to be. And the reason for that is because they're building really important skills in those very early formative years that they're going to use and build upon as they progress through their education journey. So a formal Montessori education actually begins in infancy with the Nido community, which is for young children, babies and toddlers between the ages of 0 and 3 years old. After that is when they move into the more commonly known Montessori preschool, which is for ages 3 to 6. This is also sometimes called the Montessori primary level. And then from there, they progress through lower elementary, which is for ages 6 to 9, and then to upper elementary, which is from 9 to 12. And then there are actually Montessori secondary schools as well for the middle school grades and the high school grades. So theoretically, your child could have a formal Montessori education from infancy all the way through a high school graduation. So if you have a very young baby or toddler who begins in that Nido community, you can imagine how it would be so much easier for them as they've already developed some of these baseline skills that they need around their own independence and this love of learning and self-discipline that they can carry forth into the higher grade levels. Now, if you have a preschooler who is just beginning their Montessori education, this is also a really great place to start. Even if they missed out on the Nido community, that's okay. If you think about it, Dr. Montessori's original classrooms were for preschool aged children from 3 to 6. So they will still be able to gain a lot of those foundation skills that they need. It's not until those elementary years and beyond where things start to become a little bit more questionable, simply because a Montessori learning environment requires independence. It requires a love of learning. It requires self-discipline and motivation on the child's part. And a lot of those skills were cultivated in those earlier years. So if you have a child who is coming into it brand new and they already have some previous schooling experience that is very unlike the Montessori environment, it may come as a bit of a shock and it may take a little bit more time to acclimate if they are able to acclimate. So what I'm saying is it's totally possible for a slightly older child who has never had experience in a Montessori environment to go in and be successful. There's no reason that they can't. It's just that the younger they are, the easier it's going to be for them. So now let's tackle the other aspect of this, which is Montessori in the home as a lifestyle, as a method of parenting. And the bottom line for this one is it's never too late. And it's very interesting to hear what some parents' idea of too late is, because I have many who will message me and tell me that their child is 6, 7, 8 months old and they know that they're so late to the game, which, side note, my first daughter was 6 months old when we got started. But then I will have other parents who message me about their preschool and elementary age children, sometimes even with teenagers, wondering how they can begin Montessori and saying that they feel like they're late. And I think what's happening for some of these parents is they're only seeing the visual aspect of Montessori. It's what they're seeing on the internet, and they're comparing what their home environment looks like now and thinking, this is overwhelming. There is no way I'm gonna be able to do this. I am just too late to the game. And that could not be further from the truth, because Montessori, as I've said in so many videos, Montessori is not about the stuff. Montessori really is a lifestyle. It's a way of interacting with our children so as to aid them in their development as human beings. So if we can keep that as our focus, then it's really easy to see that it really could never be too late to begin implementing Montessori practices at home with our children. So if you're a parent who has been wondering this, the first thing that you need to do is just for a little while, forget all about the shelves, forget about the activities, and forget about the toys. Instead, here's what you should be focusing on. Number one, establishing a respectful relationship with your child based on positive discipline. If up until this point you have been using systems of rewards and consequences with your child, if you've been using timeout, spanking, anything that would fall under the umbrella of a traditional style of discipline, then what you need to know is that it's never too late to hit the reset button and completely start over with your child. In order for your child to gain the most benefit from a Montessori lifestyle at home, then they need to have a mutually respectful relationship with you. And respect cannot be earned using those kinds of methods. So if you're interested in learning more about how to incorporate positive discipline at home, I have an entire video on it that can get you started, which I will link in the description box down below. Number two, it's never too late to begin involving your child in practical life work at home. And practical life work is just all of the tasks and chores that we do day in and day out to get through life in general. Things like food preparation, washing the dishes, doing the laundry, mopping and sweeping our floors, taking care of our pets and our plants. All of these chores that we're always doing, these are things that we can invite our child to do alongside of us. And for the most part, young children, especially toddlers, they really want to be involved in these kinds of activities. They want to feel valued. They want to feel like they're doing something important to contribute to the family. So why not let them help? And just to be clear, it is an invitation, especially with much younger children, because we don't want them to feel like we're forcing this work upon them. Generally speaking, if it's a task that they have chosen to do of their own will, then they are going to find joy in doing that work. And that is something that we want to cultivate. But if you have a slightly older child who is completely new to all of this, they are certainly just as capable as learning how to become involved. It's just important that you make sure that it's an invitation. You are taking the time for training so that they understand how to successfully complete these tasks independently. And for a very long time, you're probably going to have to do these tasks alongside your child so that it feels like a team effort and so that you're there to help when necessary. But you also want to refrain from jumping in and correcting every single mistake that they make. You also want to refrain from taking over the task entirely if you see that they're not doing it exactly the way that you would normally do it, because that is part of the process of learning. And if they constantly feel like they're making mistakes in your eyes, then they're not going to want to help at all. So you do have to be very gentle in how you approach it. And one other thing about your child doing practical life work at home is that there's often this emphasis in Montessori on providing child-sized items for your child to use so that they're appropriately sized for their small hands to be able to complete the activities successfully. And while this is something that Dr. Montessori herself advocated for, and that is why it is a part of the Montessori environment, I also want to let you know that it's okay if you do not have all of the child-sized items at home. Do not feel the need to go out and buy all the things just to feel like you're doing it right. It is totally fine to make do with what you have already at home, because I can tell you for sure that your child is not going to care at all. Just as an example from my own experience, my toddler 9 times out of 10 wants to use the giant broom that she sees me using as opposed to the child-sized one that she has available to her at all times, because she sees me using it. They want to imitate us. So if that is all you have, don't fret. Just use what you've got and go for it. And depending on how old your child actually is, because we're talking about whether or not it's too late to start, if they are slightly older, then there's a pretty good chance that the tools that you use are just fine size-wise for them to use anyway. Number 3, it's never too late to foster your child's independence and to empower them with choices. So there are actually two sides of the coin when it comes to fostering independence for your child. First is environmentally, how you're actually setting up your home environment to make it possible for your child to be independent. Can you add a footstool at the kitchen sink so that they can actually get up to wash their own hands before a meal, or a stool at the bathroom sink so that they can get up to brush their own teeth at the bedtime routine? Or maybe you can think about adding some low hooks or a small little shelf where they can place the things that they need to put on, like a coat or backpack, shoes, things like that, before they go to school each morning. So the changes you make don't have to be major and earth-shattering. Any tiny little things that you can think of with tools that you already have on hand that you can do in your home environment to help your child feel and be more independent, then that is going to be a step in the right direction. But the other side of that coin, as far as independence goes, is making sure that we're not doing everything for our child, especially when they're perfectly capable of doing it themselves. And I'm talking about things like getting our child dressed for school in the morning. Yes, it's faster for us to just do it so that we can get out the door on time. But think about all of the opportunities for empowerment and building their self-esteem that we can offer them. Children at the age of 2 to 3 years old are perfectly capable of getting themselves dressed. So if we take the time for training, if we show them how to get themselves dressed and we give them lots of opportunities to practice, maybe set our clocks a little bit earlier so that we have that extra time, then they are going to feel empowered by the fact that they can get themselves dressed every single morning. And that is the heart of Montessori. And speaking of empowerment, we want to offer our child choices whenever possible. Now, the general rule of thumb is that the younger our child is, the fewer choices they need. Like with younger toddlers, preschoolers, 2 choices at the most is plenty. So asking them, do you want to wear red pajamas or blue pajamas to bed? Do you want to have yogurt or string cheese for your snack? Do you want to take a bath now or in 5 minutes? Little choices like that are going to go a long way to that feeling of empowerment and that sense of control that they're otherwise lacking, because as adults, we're constantly telling them what to do throughout each and every single day. So that really goes a long way. But if you have a slightly older child, they might not be accustomed to these choices, so you have to start out small, but you do want to make sure that you're offering them choices. And depending on how old they are is going to determine the nature of the choices that you're giving them. But for example, with an elementary or middle school aged child, you might give them an option to decide when their bedtime is, as long as it's reasonable and as long as they're getting up in the morning and they're getting ready for school independently without too much of an issue. You might also offer them choices about things like when they're going to complete their homework after school. Will it be right when they get home, or will it be an hour before dinner time? Or maybe you want to involve them in the weekly meal planning for your family and they get to choose a recipe that they're going to help cook that week. Again, anytime you can offer your child an age-appropriate choice, this is going to be a great boon to their independence. Number 4, it's never too late to offer your child more opportunities for movement. Children need to move, and I'm talking like big movements: running, jumping, sliding, skipping, climbing, all of the things that tend to get on our nerves when it's happening inside. The easy solution, whenever possible, is to get outside. Spend more time outdoors, allow them to get that gross motor movement out. If you have a budget for it, maybe invest in some indoor climbing equipment if you don't have nature readily available, or just make an obstacle course out of pillows and things that you find around your house. There are so many ways to support your child's gross motor movement. And we have to remember that developmentally speaking, young children need an outlet for this, and even older children, they all need to move. So it's never too late to find ways to encourage that aspect of their development. And speaking of being outdoors, number 5, it is never too late to get outside into nature more and to incorporate more outdoor learning. Not only is it fun for your child, but being connected with nature and spending time outdoors is actually a really big part of Montessori philosophy. She believed that children have this innate connection to nature that as adults we need to make sure that we're helping them to maintain as they grow. And so being outdoors, they're naturally going to develop develop this sense of environmental stewardship. And of course, there are things that we can do to help foster that as well. But simply being outdoors is a great first step. There are also boundless numbers of learning opportunities to be had in the great outdoors. And it also serves as a really great springboard for peace education, which if you're interested in learning more about what that entails, I will leave a link to another video that I've done exactly on that topic in the description box down below. Number 6, it is never too late to learn how to become a slower, more observant, more intentional parent. A Montessori environment really emphasizes following our child's lead and paying attention to their interests and allowing them to make choices for themselves, especially as they get older and they start discovering what it is that they're passionate about and what they're interested in learning more about, as opposed to imposing our will on our child and telling them, I want you to become a doctor, or I want you to do X, Y, Z, and kind of forcing our child down a certain path that perhaps they might not have chosen for themselves. Our goal is to open as many doors as possible for our children and then to step back and just watch to see which ones they choose. When you start Montessori with an older child, you have to realize that they may actually be ready for a little bit more freedom and responsibility. If there are certain things that they're asking you to do on their own that you haven't been letting them do for whatever reason up until this point, this might be the time to sit down and reconsider the real reasons why you haven't been giving them those freedoms and those responsibilities. And then you can sit down with your child and talk about it one-on-one. That's that mutual respect, those open lines of communication, and actually talk with your child and maybe set up a plan to allow them some of those freedoms that they've been asking for. And part of being a slower, more intentional parent is not overscheduling our children with lots of extracurricular activities and sports and play dates and the whole 9 yards. We have this tendency to feel like we need to fill up our child's spare time with things to do lest they get bored. And I'm here to remind you that boredom is not a bad thing. Boredom is a gift. It is what allows our child to get in touch with their own creativity and to find what it is that they're interested in. If they're too busy every single weeknight attending practice and then spending their weekends going to games and going to every lesson that they need to get to, they're not going to have opportunities to just sit down and think about what it is that engages them, that will actually catch and hold their attention for a length of time. And if those kinds of extracurricular activities and lessons and things are things that really do engage your child and it's something that they've chosen for themselves, then by all means allow them to continue. But if it's something that you have signed them up for, or you're thinking about signing them up for, that they are not choosing and they don't really seem all that interested in doing it, then you might reconsider it, because you really want to be able to provide them with as much time as possible for them to explore their own interests on their own terms. So now, once you have addressed the previous 6 items and you have shifted your perspective a little bit to focus more on those things, because those really are the most important parts of doing Montessori at home with your children, then I say you can move on to number 7, which is it's never too late to ditch the toy box. Now, depending on how old your child actually is, because again, we're talking about whether or not it's too late to start Montessori. If your child still has a toy box that they have somewhere available with all their things in it, then I would say get rid of it. You want to transition over to what you do see in the pictures, where you've got low open shelving, you have fewer items available to your child at any given time, they're attractively displayed so that they look inviting, and chances are you'll notice that your child engages with them for longer periods of time, and they're more interested in the things that they do have. And then everything else you could just store away in a box somewhere, and then you rotate them out periodically based on your child's interests. Basically, whenever you see something starting to collect dust, it hasn't been touched in a while, that's when you put it away and you take out something else to replace it with. And if you need some more guidelines on actually how to do Montessori toy rotation and storage, I have a few videos on that as well that I can link in the description box down below for you. But my primary point is, when it comes to your child's toys, less is more. That is what is going to promote focus and concentration, which is a cornerstone of a Montessori environment. So my final word of advice to you, if you are starting out Montessori brand new and especially if you are starting it with an older child, is do not try to do all of it at once. Just pick a few things that we talked about in this video to really focus on first, things that you think you're ready and able to implement right away, and work on that. Just get down to the nitty-gritty with that one item until you feel like you've got it, and then move on to something else. Work on slowly incorporating little pieces of the Montessori philosophy into your lifestyle, one at a time at your own pace. This way you don't overwhelm yourself and you don't overwhelm your child. And when you feel like you're ready for more of the specifics and you're looking for more practical ideas and tips on getting started, I have a couple of videos that I've done in the past that I think are really good starting points. So I will leave links to each of those in the description box down below so that you can come back to them when you're ready. If you have a child at home between the ages of 0 and 3 and you are looking to take a much deeper dive into learning about Montessori, I also offer a comprehensive e-course that walks you through it step by step. So I will be sure to leave a link to that as well in the description box down below in case you're interested in learning more about it. And just in case you're new to my channel, I also wanted to let you know that this video is part of a much larger series on this YouTube channel called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori at home with our children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in learning more about, then you might even consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.